quickly just leaving the constitution, because even as you mentioned that question right now, we're seeing what's happening within parliament, where diversity of views is not necessarily encouraged, and we don't necessarily have freedom of expression or freedom of association. So it's very difficult when in the environment that we're in is not particularly conducive to criticism, where if even as an individual, someone who works in civil society, if you oppose government on a particular matter, the first thing that they say is that you are opposition, you are an activist. There are all sorts of terms which are not necessarily things that are great. And I believe that that goes completely against what this constitution was to bring to the fore, which is direct power of the people. And that's why chapter 1 gives the people the power to be able to be involved in processes, from public participation to understanding what's happening within their counties. But where I see a general gap, I believe that there are some mechanisms that exist to support the inclusion of young people or people living with disabilities. But I want to talk facts and statistics, not feelings. So if we give the example of July 16th, very recently, last week, an article by The Star, by John Mushangi and Benjamin Imende, where they talk about civil service dominated by an older workforce, 35%, between the age of 51 and 60. Only young people in civil service, 17%. 17%. When we're talking about the majority population, 70% of the population is young, and only 17% are in civil service. There's a huge gap. And so there's even the human resource planning and succession management strategy for public service. There's a whole entity that exists that's working on succession, but they have struggled. The number of programs they have tried to launch to encourage young people to enter the public service, we have seen. The most recent one is being funded by the World Bank, but there's still a general gap. And what I feel is that even as recently as yesterday, they were talking about perhaps opening universities in September. And one of the reasons they were saying that it might not likely happen is because of old professors. Okay, you might think that that's not a large issue to mention, but it is. Because even we did a study last year on TVETs in Kisumu, Kericho, and Busia. And the feedback that we received is a lot of the things that they are being taught is outdated. The skills they are being taught, they cannot utilize today. So when we say young people should look for opportunities elsewhere, it's just to show you that the world is moving at a completely different pace, and the ones who decide how our country moves forward does not understand the majority population. So it should actually give our president sleepless nights, because as much as we are launching Google balloons and 5G and enforcing that CS Kagwe announces every day we should work from home, the reality is most young people are in the informal sector and they cannot work from home. It's impossible right now. So what does that mean for a country that relies on agriculture and the informal sector? So in that aspect, I think that one, we need to get an understanding of who the population is in terms of majority. And also for marginalized communities, we're here discussing the revenue bill, the revenue division bill. Those same communities who have been marginalized for decades are the ones fighting for it to remain. But here we are asking one man, one vote. So we are retrogressively moving, backward in our own constitution. So I think for me, it's the lack of understanding and the futuristic aspect of how we view our country. And we talk about Vision 2030 and visions for this country. But if we don't understand the youth of today, there will be no implementation of visions, because we are completely moving in a different direction from where we need to move with the majority population.
Great insights there. I really want to bring in Honorable Mwaura. I hope you're still with us, Mheshimiwa. Just to touch on the issue of how political parties are structured when it comes to nominations. There's a comment here from Charles saying, I think women, young people, and people living with disabilities, minority and marginalized groups should scheme towards winning elective seats. That's the biggest impediment towards implementation of Article 100, but also bearing in mind that a lot of these candidates need to be fronted by their political parties. And the way they're structured, it often favors a certain kind of individual. When you're talking about how political parties are structured, just give us insights into that, knowing the inner workings of how these parties and groups work.